All right, welcome everybody to First Contact Radio. Today I'm here with guest Mark Sargent. We are going to talk about flat Earth. How you doing, Mark? Welcome back to First Contact Radio.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm doing great.
You know, it's been a little over a year since last time we spoke, and in the course of this year, it's been pretty amazing on what has taken place within this community. I mean, when you and I first talked, I think there was three people that were doing the videos.
Yeah.
There was Eric, there was Matt, and you,
Yeah.
and that was it. And now there's, you can't stop finding them.
No.
And there's
Every day there's new people joining this thing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we've been kind of shying away now from saying that it's a flat Earth movement, more of a flat Earth awakening.
Right.
And every single day, I'm not kidding you, I have to set the filter to daily now. I joked about it, a year ago. It said, I used, set the filter like 1 month, then it was 1 week, now it's 1 day.
Right.
I type it in flat Earth, and it literally said the filter to the last 24 hours, and then I also have to go to mainstream news and type in flat Earth and make sure that I haven't missed anything. Now, granted, a lot of the people that listen to my stuff and other people's stuff will send me what's going on in the mainstream news, but and we'll get to it, I'm sure. But there's been a lot of stuff that has happened in the last 12 months.
It sure has.
It's been nutty.
Mm-hmm.
It's been nutty.
It has, and what I find is that the amount of research that is being done is just getting better and better.
Yeah.
And that's what's really awesome about it.
Yeah, it started out with because I didn't really do any experiments. I just put the question out there, and Jaron from Jaronism started experiments with laser tests. Jeffrey Grubb from Statesism.com, he started doing tests. Paul Michael Dale started doing tests. Sandy, I can go on and on. But everyone's been trying to find, because it's kind of a gold rush right now. Everyone's trying to figure out how this thing is going to, when it really becomes popular, how it's going to make money. And not that money should be the driving force, but let's face it, that's how these things work. A lot of things become popular because, and once they get to a certain popularity, the people with the money start coming in. People talking to me after the interview I did with you last year, which is why part of the reason I moved out of Colorado from reality television shows, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, they were anticipating that this may turn into a big thing," and this was last summer. And I was going, "Really? You think so?" And they're going, "Yeah, this could actually happen." And they were screen testing people. And I'm not going to name who's who, but they were screen testing basically everybody that was doing stuff in the flat Earth community that was higher profile. And so, and the experiments kind of came from there, where people were just like, "Okay, what can we do to get people's attention?" So, the laser test, the moonlight test, and the water temperature test, the curvature test, that was the big one. That's what everybody's been jumping on. Whether or not you use the easiest one is going to be the pulling the boats back when you can't see them anymore. So a boat leaves the horizon, and then you use whatever it is, that cool Pix 900. I never bought one of them, but I've seen what they can do.
Right.
You got that amazing zoom, and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you can bring the boat back. And then if you only use part of the zoom, then it goes away again. You can use the zoom again, you can pull it back again, and that can't be possible. That's
right.
That's such a blessing. So.
Right. That interview that you had with Patricia, she was pretty on. I mean, she was grilling you pretty hard.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
About the mixer.
About the mixer and she was grilling you really hard about what was you have it up at your site? Is Mark, is he a shill? That was the title of the interview.
Yeah.
And she went at it, and she asked you all the hard questions that and I understand, and I'm sure you understand that it's a new area. People are skeptical, and you got all kind of personalities that are working something out. Sometimes, you got to work through all of those personalities, get past the messengers to get to the message.
Yeah.
So are things smoothing out in that area?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
It's never been easy what we've been doing so far. It has been really, really volatile in the community at large, mostly because conspiracy people are so twitchy as it is, to where I made a video I called it the Flat Earth Monty Python Life of Brian comparison, which I thought was very, very true. Which was, if you remember Monty Python Life of Brian, he was misunderstood that he was the Christ, and he was running from all his fans through the streets, and he drops a shoe.
Right.
And he figures, well, they're going to catch me if I go back and get the shoe, so I'm just going to keep running. And they all stop around the shoe, and they all question the meaning of the shoe, and what does it mean? What's the symbolism of it? All of a sudden you could see, and it was very deliberate, of course. It was like you saw like 4 different religions become coalesce right then and there. It was like, no, we should all hold our shoes up,
right,
and put them on pedestals. No, we should collect shoes, and it's like, no, we should wear one shoe in honor of him. And it's like, they all were, all it was, of course, he had just dropped his shoe. That's kind of what's been happening, or it's been continually happening with the Flat Earth movement, awakening, which is people want, it's still in flux. Everyone, is there a dome? Is there not dome? Is it an infinite plane? Is it not? Is it multiple dimensions? What shape is the dome? It goes on. And everyone wants to have their own model, and some people really, really dig in their feet. I'm not going to poke too much fun at Eric here, but that's how Eric and I, became opposing factions, is because, his people contacted me and said, oh yeah, by the way, Eric didn't like the way you were referencing Crow 777 in the lunar wave. He also doesn't like, what was the other thing? He said, oh yeah, and he wants you to make sure it's an absolutely perfectly flat model, and you're not supposed to, your talking points should be limited to this. I'm going, what are you talking? It's like, okay, not to be mean or anything, but it's like, look, I don't need permission. His videos were out 2 months before mine. That's like, yeah, fine, he wrote the Atlantean Conspiracy last year, but he got a lot of those ideas from Paul Michael Bales, who came out and talked about this. So imagine that happening everywhere.
Right.
Even now, Patricia and I, our disagreement was about something different. That was about the mixer, and because the mixers initially was her idea. It was supposed to be the Houston mixer. That was how it was going to happen. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, she's part of the London mixer, which is happening right now. My mixer just came kind of as a side note, because somebody contacted me and said, oh, Mark, you should do something up in Seattle since you're up there. It's like, all right. I honestly didn't want to do it. I was like, really, can't somebody else do it? But then I said, okay, I'm just going to go do it. And when I did it, it turned into a really fun evening with an after party. And yeah, it wasn't too racy, but there was a lot of stuff implied, and the Christian community really latched onto that and said that you should take a more of a role model example, and Patricia didn't want my escapades spilling over onto her stuff.
Right.
So she's all about integrity and image, and I get that. But so having getting grilled for the 3 hours, was my best, the best time I probably could have spent, but had to be done. You got to pay the piper in some cases.
Right. Over this last year, since we spoke last, I've been on a nonstop study. I mean, it's nonstop, and I've watched as much as I can watch. I keep finding stuff. I think that we need to look literally outside the box to figure out what's going on here. And so, kind of as I listened to the questions Patricia was asking you, I wrote down a number of them, and I have what I've found and what I think might be answers to some of these questions, which is what I want to discuss with you, all these various things. For me, the whole premise is this. The premise that I'm following and what I'm looking at, and this is based on a year of research since we spoke last, that if I was coming to this earth and I was completely unaware of what was going on this earth and I arrived, I would want to know, what are the manuals of how to use Earth? What are the manuals that I would get? And if I was to come here and the operating manual for Earth, there'd be a couple of them. One of them certainly would be the Bible.
Sure.
And so my premise is that the Bible is one of the operating manuals of what's going on, at least a script that's being played out. along with a couple others. So I'm going to look at that book to see if I can see some proofs in what it is that I'm trying to understand here.
Okay.
And along the way, there are certainly a number of proofs in there that the Bible is a flat earth book. Once I started seeing that was the case, then it got to be no longer is the earth flat, but what does that mean? What does that mean to us? Because who cares if it's flat, if it's round, if it doesn't have any meaning or purpose? It's just another bit of information. And as I started looking at like Rob Skiba's work, that started making sense, because the Book of Enoch is another one of those books I've always thought was very significant to a story that's unfolding. And as I started putting these together, I discovered the Nag Hammadi Library. And the Nag Hammadi Library, are you familiar with that?
No.
The Nag Hammadi Library was discovered in 1945, and they are a series of texts. There were 13 leather-bound volumes that were found in a jar in a cave in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1945. And in there, there's words and text written by the various disciples and the apostles. There's Mary Magdalene has something there. There's John has something. Thomas, Judas, on and on. There's all kind of texts that are there. So I'm starting to read through these, and what I start finding is there's a story in the Apocryphon of John that he is telling where Yeshua returns to him after the resurrection and tells him this wonderful story of the creation and how everything comes together. And in this story, he talks basically about these immortal realms where you have the Mother, Father, God, and upon their interaction together, there was a spark created, the Christ consciousness, or the divine autogens. And this then went out, created 4 other realms, and each of these realms had beings in them. There were 4 realms, and each of these realms had 3 sub-realms. So you have all these multiple realms and kingdoms of sorts, and in one of them there was a being named Yaldabaoth who came into existence. And Yaldabaoth came into existence in an unnatural way through his mother Sophia, which means wisdom. And this Yaldabaoth was then cast out of the immortal realms and ended up on Earth. And while on Earth, Yaldabaoth discovered that he wasn't the be-all, end-all God, because one day God appeared and looked down from the heavens, and in the water around Yaldabaoth, he saw the reflection of God and decided he wanted to trap that so God would be subservient to him. So he created the skin suit, the human body, all in an effort to trap God. Now, as we go through the story of Yaldabaoth, it's very similar to the story of Yahweh. And so I started looking at this and thinking that's kind of bizarre, because we're taught that Yahweh is the God. And according to Yeshua, Jesus Christ, that's not the case, that this was a fallen one that came down, and everything that we know is a deception from the beginning, because we've been deceived to believe that this Yahweh is not actually who we've been told he is. The point of all of this is, in one of the descriptions of in the Nag Hammadi, and let me find the actual quote here. Okay, here we go. In the Nag Hammadi Library, in the Apocryphon of John, at one point when he's talking about the creation and this Yaldabaoth creating, because Yaldabaoth, when he was cast out of the immortal realms, he only had the power to be able to manifest and work with what was already there. He wasn't the creator. And so he could replicate what he saw. And so as he was bringing into existence various different beings that were helpers for him and creating and replicating these other realms, at one point it says, and he placed 7 kings, this was in the realms that he was creating, that he was filling, he placed 7 kings, each corresponding to the firmaments of heaven, over the 7 heavens and over the depths of the abyss. And I read that and I thought, what does that mean, each corresponding to the firmaments of heaven? And I started thinking, well, and we're told that in our Bible that on the second day God created the firmament. And I thought, well, we think of the firmament as a dome. So when the immortal realms are talking about the firmaments of heaven, are they talking about dome cities? Are these dome cities that are out there of the immortal realms? And Yaldabaoth, or this story of this being, was kicked out, because we have it in a variety of ways. Michael kicks out Satan, throws him down to earth. We have the story in the Sumerian tablets of a Lulu who first came down, escaping a problem that was there, and then he was later followed by Enlil and Enki and Anu. So we have this same story of these beings coming from this other realm, which is a realm that all have firmaments. So I started realizing and looking at the idea that if there's this immortal realm with these firmaments, and Yaldabaoth created an artificial reality based on that, and the human being was created in order to trap God, then basically what we have is a being that is trapped in a terrarium, controlled by a entity who is pretending to be God, and we're here stuck not knowing what reality we're in, because we're just trying to figure out where we live. We're told we live on a ball when we actually live on a flat plane.
Sure.
And so everything's out of whack. And our way of getting out is kind of unseen to us. And I believe that the mission of Jesus Christ, when he came, was to show us how to get out of the terrarium. That this body is not a body that God can be trapped in, but that we can rise above that. And I believe that was truly the mission, and how the whole idea of being saved, because it's never been about original sin of something we've done. The original sin occurred when the being was cast out of the immortal realms. So that to me has been what I've been talking about in my show, probably the last couple months, and it just, to me, it makes a whole lot of sense that we're a replication of another reality.
Interesting.
And to me, it's this immortal realm with dome cities.
Yeah, I could see that. Several people have mentioned variations of that, and why not, right? It would explain a lot of things. One, it would explain, because some people said, well, isn't there Mars and Jupiter and Venus? It's like, well, probably not the way you think of them. There may be other realms, because I think I've mentioned to you before that I've seen, with night vision, there's stuff flying up there all the time, and it's not us, and they seem to be real casual about it. It's like they're living right on top of us, or they're going from one place to another, and they're traveling over the top of us.
Right.
To get wherever they're going. And so I have no doubt there's other civilizations. Now, whether they're a combination of previous civilizations of us, because it's really apparent that we are not version 1.0.
Right.
We're probably version like 6 or 7 or whatever you want to call it. But there's probably some survivors from previous civilizations from 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, and then there's probably other dome cities out there that are in the same way. Because I've always said, it's not going to be a one-off.
Right.
If you're going to build one of these, you're going to build a whole bunch of these. Why wouldn't you? Why not have 10 or 100 or more? Depending on what advanced race or divine being we're talking about here.
And if you go through the Nag Hammadi library, there's a number of the books that replicate that same idea, that multiple firmaments, and that what was created here was a copy of what was known to already exist.
Sure. Why not? Yeah.
And then one of the questions that was brought up is that why, when we look up at all the other planets, we see them round, then we must be round. But I found an answer to that. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 40. It says that there are also celestial bodies and there are also terrestrial bodies. And the glory of the celestial ones is the glory of the celestial ones, and the glory of the terrestrial one is another. So it makes a very clear statement that those up there don't have to be the same as what we're on, that those are different.
Oh yeah. And wasn't there another chapter and verse that they were put in the stars and the planets were put in the sky for signs and wonders,
right,
as part of the giant clock system.
Right.
Two points there. One, because people have said, "Aren't you killing astrology with flat Earth?" I go, "No, not at all. It just means that the clock is way more intimate and way closer. It's not millions of light years away, which are ridiculous distances. It's right there." Second was, people, and I know as scientists, especially love jumping on this one, where they say, "Well, it's obvious that Mars and Jupiter and Venus are all spheres, therefore we must be a sphere." And I go, fine. And you may have heard me say this, where you take a pair of binoculars, take it to your local planetarium, and look up at Jupiter and tell me, with your binoculars inside a planetarium, does Jupiter look more or less real and more or less spherical? And it's a rhetorical question. It doesn't make any difference because you're in a planetarium and that's not real.
Right.
And so they go, what's your point? I go, my point is, if you walk out of that planetarium, who's to say you're not in a bigger planetarium?
Right.
And then they come back, they say, well, science, at NASA. And I was like, see, all roads lead back to the same place, which is the gatekeepers that we know as the American government.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a fascinating study, and I think it's very significant simply because the Bible, is the book that we're told is the be-all, end-all. And if that being in that book that is involved with the creation of things is not the God that we believe, but is actually the fallen one, then the deception is, well, that's a big deception. And no wonder we're having some challenges. Now, are there mixed up versions in there? I'm guessing there are, because the stories in the Bible in Yahweh only go back 6,000 years, where the stories of the Sumerian tablets, according to Zechariah Stishon, they go back 400,000 years of this Anunnaki story. So there's something that occurred more. It seems that the stories in the Bible are versions of other stories, so maybe Yahweh is a combination of both Enlil and Enki, representing the good and the bad, because I think that there's a lot of mix-up in that when we look at the Bible of which one is the real God, which one isn't. Because Jesus always refers to God. He never calls him Yahweh. He only calls him the Father. And in the Nag Hammadi library, he only refers to him as the Father or the Mother or the All-Parent. And so I think it's very significant that he's not calling the same name as the Old Testament. There's a very different being that's there. Something changed. And even in the Nag Hammadi library, it talks of a changing that occurred between Yaldabaoth and then one of Yaldabaoth's sons, because Yaldabaoth was just too out of whack. He thought he was God, and eventually he was removed from power by those higher up than him, up in the immortal realms. They had enough of that. And whatever's going on here has always been, as it says, under the watchful eye of spirit. So whatever is happening has its purpose, and I don't doubt that the creators of this reality, the creators of humankind, didn't have their skills, because they obviously did. It's just, what is the nature of us here? And if the nature early on, according to some of the stories, is that we were a slave race, then that kind of ties into a lot of things of where our area that we're enslaved is, maybe in a big terrarium. I like the model that Rob Skiba does. I think that makes a lot of sense, because it fits right in with the Book of Enoch, which is one of these manuals that we should be looking at. I think the Book of Enoch, the Bible, especially the Book of Revelation, I think that outlines some stuff. And it's like we talked about before, all the world's a stage, and we're playing something out here, a story, and the story is written down somewhere, and I think those are our scripts. And if we...
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Rob Skiba, it's funny you mentioned that, because I still use his slides on the that he did like a 5-stage thing, how it was built, which was, a dome basically inside a giant box, which would make sense anyway, because if you're going to build, some sort of device like that, it's still going to be better if you start off with a square. Machinery, all our buildings, you start off with squares. It's way more efficient to do it that way. Now, what you have inside it, that's a whole other thing. But I love the whole concept where it was water, literally water above this. Water, a firmament separates the waters above and the waters below. Because that would be the ultimate fail-safe. Which is, even if they figured out a way to get through it, even if it's a doomsday scenario. Which of course we didn't know, or maybe we did when we started trying to punch holes with it, with atomic weapons back in the 1950s. But I love Rob Skiba's version.
There's a number of guys out there that I've been watching their videos. There's Shazwar Bukti, I hope I pronounced that right. There's a Plain Truth. Have you seen any of his videos?
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff.
He's good. A guy named YouTube user named Peter Pan. There's another one, Wakey Wakey.
Of course, yeah.
And then Flat water, flat Earth, and then Aaron Dover.
Yep.
I mean, it just, and the body of work that they're putting out there is pretty awesome.
Oh yeah, not to mention Odd TV and Andy Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Marty Leeds. Yeah, there's some great stuff.
Great stuff.
Are we
yes.
Still recording? Good. There's a bunch of people. In fact, the top 20 or 25 videos now versus what it was, a year ago is amazing. The amount of content, the amount of hits.
Right.
A couple of mine, and they're not even on my channel. Broke 1 million hits a while ago. And Eric Dubé's thing's got one it's over 1 million hits, and I think Odd TV is going to hit his pretty soon. And it's amazing.
It is, and the work that people are doing is extremely fascinating. Yeah. Extremely fascinating what they're finding out, and after a while, it's just to the point of, another piece of proof that you already see and know, just kind of confirming, and that's for me, it's kind of already past the point of the Earth is the flat. It's now like, what's next? What's the next thing? Because how long can you keep running around saying Earth is flat? Okay, so what?
That's why I started going down, the testimonials, where 7-8 months ago now, where people started coming to me, because remember I was asking for whistleblowers at the end of one of the clues, and people started coming forward from the United States military. And once that first guy from the Navy came out and said, look, all the instruments that I use, the high-tech, show me that it's flat, then, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, different engineers, different corporate people, anyone that had to do with travel or map making, surveyors, 2 different surveyors came out. I think I've got 17 people on my list now that have either had me read statements because they wanted to remain anonymous because they didn't want to lose their jobs, or they came on air and just said, what, screw it, I'm going to talk about it. And right. I've just been compiling, and not only so for me, it's really been validated because not only have none of these people recanted. None of these people came back. It's like, what? I retract the whole thing. None of that has happened. But nobody has come out against them. None of their peers. So you would think, someone would come out, from the Army or the Navy, one of the major branches of the United States military, and say, what, that Air Force guy you had on there was a piece of crap, and here's why. You'd think somebody would come out against it, because what do those guys have to lose? Right. Coming out against the flat Earth, that's easy. Should be easy enough. Why didn't a scientist come out against anyone? Now, to be fair, I did 2 plane surveyors. There's 2 types of surveyors that are out there. There's planar and then there's geodetic. And a geodetic surveyor made his own video. He didn't contact me directly. He just made his own video and says, yeah, here's why I think it's round. But you got to remember, a geodetic surveyor might as well be an astronomer. He starts his day with every calculation saying being adapted towards a curved surface. So he has to, if he doesn't believe in a ball, then he doesn't, his career is over. So his view is a bit skewed, and plus he had no arguments. I mean, there was this one part, I was listening to his video, and he had a couple good points right up to where he was talking about the Statue of Liberty that you could see it from 60 miles away, and he's going, that 8 inches per mile square thing, yeah, fine, I get it, it's 8 inches per mile square. He goes, but you guys are doing it wrong. And then he goes, so you see the Statue of Liberty from 60 miles away. He pauses, he goes, so what? So what? You can see, I was going, what do you mean, so what? He didn't answer for it. It's like, so what? You shouldn't be able to see it. But he didn't, he was in such denial, there was nothing you could do for him. Right. And again, once he believed it, if he ever believed it, he had to quit his job. So, same thing with astronomy.
There's been a number of publications that I've recently found that are out there. There's the NASA reference publication 1207. You've heard of that one?
Not by number, but what is it?
In the concluding remarks, it says, this report derives and defines a set.
Yep. Yeah, I know that one. So, a flat and stationary Earth.
Yep, flat. Then there's the propagation of electromagnetic fields over a flat Earth, a PDF that came out in which it says, and then what we have, the Department of Defense World Geodetic System. Yep. You were just talking about that, where they said it's an Earth-centered, Earth-fixed terrestrial reference system. So it seems that the military's, even using a system that they're not really referring to, that is all Earth-centered.
and top that it's getting even weirder now. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about. I mean, most people have heard about it by now. The BOB Neil deGrasse Tyson rap battle early in the year, but Neil deGrasse Tyson, after all that, he comes on during a physics panel, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, and says that there's a probability that we're now living in a simulated reality, a simulated universe, and none of the physicists were on board with this. He was absolutely on his own. And then 2 weeks after that, or not even 2 weeks, but maybe a week after that, Elon Musk comes out, says the same thing, parrots everything Neil Tyson says. And then I was like, okay, I think we're done with that. And no, the Alex Jones show, InfoWars, they covered it.
Right.
And they ran their own thing. I was going, why now? Before it's like, okay, so the flat Earth, that's nuts. But a simulated reality, that's perfectly legit.
Right.
Even though you're contradicting yourself, because if it is simulated, then chances are it's going to be built like we build a simulation, which is flat. Almost, I would say 99% of the games that we build on large scale, giant MMOs, virtual realities, where you're walking around a perfectly flat world. And the reason is, more than anything else, is it's easier to write. You don't have to deal with the curve.
Right.
So you just build in a flat world. No one's going to know the difference. Kind of like the pilots when they were telling me, every pilot goes up there and they're up at altitude. They say, yeah, we look around and the horizon looks perfectly flat all the way around. But it's not really flat, right?
Right.
It can't be really flat. But they got this weird paradox that's going on in their heads. Yeah, it looks absolutely flat, but it's not flat because we're told it's not flat. It's like, what do you mean? You're told it's not flat.
Right.
It's great psychological conditioning. Anyway, so I'm really surprised that that's what it's kind of turning to now, where it's almost like they're trying to veer it off into a different direction.
Right. And bless you. And that could well be. I mean, if one is to simply take the biblical order of creation and just look at that kind of explains the whole scenario. On day number 1, first there was the earth. The earth was formless and was empty.
Yeah.
Okay, then we get to day number 1, and God creates the light and the dark first. On day 2, he creates the firmament. After day 2, everything now is underneath the firmament. Day 3, he calls forth the dry land. And all it says, he calls forth the land from the water. Never any place is there a mention of he took the earth, he formed it into a ball, got it spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. He just said he called. And then on the 4th day, the sun and the moon are created. We're told that we are out there revolving around the sun, and that's how we came into existence. But the sun wasn't created to the 4th day under the firmament. So that kind of throws that whole theory out the way. So if you're going to be someone who's going to read the Bible and believe this is the way to go, then you can't believe in the sphere. You can't. And anyone who's out there that claims they can, then you haven't read the Bible, because the Bible's a flat earth book.
Testingtheglobe.com.
Absolutely.
Which is brilliant. And, the couple points, well, the main one that I brought up in my clues, which was, and I didn't do it by name, I just want to make sure people figure it out, the Tower of Babel. I mean, that's the most glaring to me. It's like, look, the Tower of Babel is supposed to reach heaven. How are you going to do that if the earth is spinning and it's revolving around the sun? That tower is going nowhere.
Right.
But if it's in a flat, stationary system with a dome, and look at it's a short story, but I mean, look at what it said. It was like that God realized, it's like, oh yeah, I mean, basically, paraphrasing here, God basically was looking at him going, oh yeah, they're going to make it. Can't let that happen. Way. I mean, he knew it was like this tower, not only was they building it, it was going to work.
Right.
It was actually going to make it to the bridge to heaven. I don't know how big this thing was. And then he made sure that didn't happen. Or the other one, which is one of my favorites, and it's completely glossed over, which is Joshua. Where Joshua asks God to hold the sun the extra day in the sky, so he could slay more enemies. I mean, in a solar system model, that's a lot more work. You're going to stop the whole solar system at that point. And if you do that, you're messing with a whole bunch of physics engines at the same time. But if it's just a flat stationary system, you just hit pause, and that's it. The sun goes up. You just keep it there for a while.
That's it. I know that you were getting some grief from some folks about the Orlando Ferguson map.
Yeah.
You know what? You know what? I have no issue with that map because the Bible does describe the four corners of the earth.
Yeah.
So you've got four angels out there. You got you got in the middle. You've got the North Pole. You've got the continents arranged around it. Really, the only difference between the various models is whether the area is concave or whether it's flat, leading out to the seawall.
Yeah.
And so, it's all the same thing, and just little arguments over whether it goes like this or whether it goes like this.
Yeah, I like the Orlando Ferguson map. I still think it's quite elegant.
Mm-hmm.
Although some weird things, like I can't call it a roulette table anymore because if you add up all the numbers on a roulette table, they add up to 666. Who knew? I had to check that one myself. It's like, really? Seriously? So now I have to say, like, hubcap, but how many people have hubcaps anymore? But yeah, I like it mostly now because of the four corners. I mean, that was a biblical map that he put together. It was real.
Exactly.
Quoting chapter and verse, and he put the angels in the corners, holding back the four winds. And yeah, again, it may be circular in nature, the part that we're on, but eventually you're going to have a border.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to design something like that, I hate to say this, and this is not lazy, it's easier to, you start with a square,
mm-hmm.
and then you build everything inside it. And I don't like to use, but I'll say it, why not? Machines don't like programming, and programming doesn't like to draw circles.
Right.
And create circular borders. People don't understand when I say that. I mean, the computer does not know how to draw a circle like we can draw a circle. We can draw a circle just because we can draw it. It's built into us for whatever reason. But a computer doesn't know how to do that. They literally have to draw circles with little right hand, little steps. Oh, it's like, no, I see a perfect circle. I can draw it in HD. I'm going, yeah. I take a magnifying glass to it when you get a chance. It's just a question of resolution.
Right.
A circle is literally like the machine sample. So what I'm getting at is that that square model from the Orlando Ferguson map, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense to me because that's what you would start with.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do some stuff inside it, but eventually the border, it should be a hard border.
Should be a hard, yeah. And what the middle, I mean, okay, so the whole point is there, though, that you got the North Pole and the things are arranged around it. How they, are, the exact angles, that doesn't matter. Because you got the continents and then you've got the ice wall. And that's all there, in that model. So I think that seems to be the interesting point. Where some of the other questions that were out there? What kind of, there's an article I was reading, ChristianFlatEarthMinistry.org, where they were giving you and Matt some grief because of the model that you have, because you say that maybe aliens created this, and they're saying, no, Yahweh created this. Let me throw out a little reality here. Yahweh was not from Earth, which makes Yahweh an alien to this planet. So if we say an alien created something on Earth, guess what? Or Yahweh created something, it's not out of line to think alien. So
sure.
You're thinking of a being outside of this Earth, so are they. Same point, is just arguing over little names.
Yeah, you're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
I've kind of joked recently, but I kind of like it, where, let's face it, if the first golden spaceship that shows up and lands somewhere, let's say in London, and they come out and they say, oh yeah, by the way, we built the structure, there is a firmament, people are going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to say, especially depending on how they look. If the first, I don't want to belittle religion when I say this, but the first super beings that show up, whether they're technology based, and if they can create signs and wonders, not to feed into the prophecy too much, but if they can create signs and wonders, people will buy it.
Mm-hmm.
100%. If they come down and they say, oh yeah, by the way, we're the ones that built it. You want proof? Fine. We're going to turn the moon green for an hour. Wow. The moon becomes green. Oh, people will, who were we to doubt them?
Right.
The definition of, you talk about the Anunnaki. To the people of their day, they were considered gods.
Mm-hmm.
So who is God at that point? I'm not trying to belittle anything. I'm saying that did God build the firmament, or did he subcontract out the work?
Yeah.
Meaning, do I believe in God and that there's, he's out there? Yes. Do I think he absolutely had his handprint on this particular firmament? don't know. Only time will tell, because we don't know, because somebody could come along and say that they claim to it, and who's to say differently?
Right.
Where you get into the whole false Christ thing, the fake second coming. Whoever supposedly, if you believe that, that someone shows up first, claims to be Christ, and everybody buys it.
Right.
And when you're growing up, if you're Christian or whatever, you're thinking, well, no, I wouldn't fall for it. Oh no, wouldn't you? Why? If they're convincing enough and charismatic enough and shiny enough, you're going to buy it. And also, what's different is that if the mainstream media latches onto it, that's how you know. Because, if it's like the golden spaceship that landed, they're obviously our saviors, and we should all bow down. And blah, blah. If the mainstream media goes down that path, well, then you know what's going on.
Right. And I think it's going to be very easy to fool people. I mean, and I keep going back to the non-commodity library, and what Yeshua said over and over was that God was not this being. God was this ultimate omnipotent force, spirit that didn't have a name. It didn't go by a name, because the moment you could name something, the moment you have control over it to some degree or another. So when there's a God or a being that's claiming and giving a name, well, that's contrary to what Jesus was saying. That's contrary to the message that the ultimate source doesn't have a name, so you can't control it.
Yep.
And so I think that Yahweh was one of the helpers, and whatever the case may be, if he was a combination of others, time will tell. But I think we can get fooled very easy if we don't really try to understand more of the story because of fear.
Yeah, I agree. Another side one which I kind of enjoyed was, because I had to get into the whole Enoch thing later, the Book of Enoch. But there was an interesting one where it wasn't the Book of Enoch, it was the Book of Jasher. The last part of chapter 3, where Enoch was leaving. So the Book of Jasher, chapter 3, he was leaving. He was walking away. He was leaving the world, and he was walking off the world, which was interesting. And they had a whole bunch of followers. It's like, don't go, we'll walk with you. And it turned into one of those Forrest Gump situations where he's running across the country. He's got all these people following him. And they get down to this part, and they were really specific about it. And they said they couldn't follow him the last part because he entered a land of ice and snow, and more ice and more snow. And they couldn't. It was like this big barrier that they couldn't get past, and he got past it. And they didn't. They had to turn around. He kept telling them the entire time, "Look, you're not going to make it. You're never going to be able to follow me the whole way." And they couldn't.
Right.
But the ones that turned back at the end, the ones that survived, told that story. That we entered this land of ice and snow. I was going, could that have been the time where there was a land bridge at the bottom of South America to that peninsula of Antarctica? And he walked onto Antarctica and literally walked off the edge of the world. Well, walked past the edge of the world.
Right.
Of our world. He had access to it, nobody else did. Thought that was very interesting for me, because you don't see a lot of biblical passages. You remember the Middle Eastern stuff mostly, snow and palm trees, dates.
Right.
Compared to this very, very cold environment. How many stories in the Bible or any other text you hear a lot of stories about super cold weather?
Right.
Only one that I can think of.
Right. Yeah. Admiral Byrd, he made a really good point when he did his interview on CBS. He talked about the land that was out there, a continent that the size of the United States, that unexplored. So for anybody who is looking at this and doesn't necessarily want to understand and go with the whole flat earth, you can at least go with the interview that there's land on this earth that we haven't explored yet. So at the very least, there's that. And what's going on over there? What's on that land? Who's on that land? Are there still civilizations that live over there?
Yeah. The legend of the Iron Republic. The story that one of those groups, like somebody actually sailed real close to Antarctica and found an inlet through Antarctica, well, part of Antarctica, and when they got about halfway through, they ran into some boats from a completely different civilization that were ahead of ours, called the Iron Republic, and they said, "Oh yeah, you guys can't keep going out here. They're never going to let you, make it that far.
Right.
If we didn't stop you." no doubt that there's versions of this out there that are less advanced than us and more advanced than us.
Right. And, do you know the term archons?
Yeah.
So, I mean, these could be the archons. These could be, the Greys. This could be some other races of beings that we're seeing in the skies, and maybe that's their home place.
Yeah.
I think it's just, have you seen The Martian?
Yes.
The movie?
I was so angry when I saw that movie.
That movie?
No, I didn't see it in the theater. I downloaded it.
That movie has given NASA carte blanche. They can now do whatever they want, and people will believe them.
Yeah.
Because you look at that movie, NASA's all over it, and everyone's going to watch that movie and say, see, we can go to Mars. Look what we can do there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they proved that you can float in space. They proved that you can fake the Mars in a theater, and they proved that people will not know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Daniel Tosh, the comedian on Tosh.0, he made that great quote where he goes, I don't believe there's space. He goes, just because you attach a camcorder to a Roomba and put it in the desert doesn't mean you went to Mars.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, but yeah, the Martian, and I was nominated for Academy Awards, and falsely. There's no way. I mean, I saw it, I was going, really, because that was a piece of crap. I've seen this movie before. All that movie was ripped out part of the plot from Mission to Mars, which was 2000, I believe, with Don Cheadle, and it was. They just reworked that storyline. It wasn't even a new storyline. It wasn't even that interesting, in my opinion. Of course, they had. I mean, Matt Damon did fine, but there was that part where they blended in. I knew where they were going. Once they said, "Oh yeah, the key," what saved him was the existing Mars rover. It's like he dug up the old Mars rover and salvaged some parts from it, and that's what he used to get out of there. And so they were blurring the lines because we know the Mars rover is there.
Right.
For all this fictional stuff must also be the Americans, I swear. I love this country, but man, we are so gullible sometimes.
We are, definitely. And you've probably seen some of the videos out there of Greenland and with the NASA rover out in Greenland.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that stuff that Jaron found.
Yeah, so that's kind of funny. It's like, are we really there or are we in Greenland? Good point. Where are we at?
Yeah. But I think it's coming to an end though, because they can approve all the budget stuff they want, but you can't kick the can down the road. There was something that I had said some months ago, which was the problem that NASA has now is that they can't fake the future stuff,
right? Because
it's too hard to fake. The detection ability of the general public is too good. It's way too good. The internet is way too fast, and it's got way too many things that are cross-referencing each other.
Right.
And and I said that if let's say I was working for the government and somebody handed me the fake Mars program, so okay, unlimited budget, whoever you want to pick on your team, go fake the Mars mission. I go, you're out of your mind. No way I can fix that thing. I don't care how much money and how much time I have. I can't do it. Right. Because the reason that people don't figure out what I mean here, the reason why there are places like moviemistakes.com and moviebloopers.com and all this other crap is because movies, to make them efficiently, you shoot them out of sequence.
Right.
You shoot all one area. You shoot this, you shoot that. And because of that, there's some little inconsistency that shows up. Doesn't matter how much money you spend on the movie. I mean, Lord of the Rings had moviemistakes.com. In fact, it seems like the bigger productions you have, the more little details you're going to miss. So you can't, because things are shot out of production, because they're shot out of the normal order, you're going to make mistakes. So if you're going to fake a Mars mission, that's where you're going to get yourself in trouble. So you're going to make mistakes. And all it takes is one guy. I mean, it's one guy, some nerd in Nebraska at 3 a.m. All he has to do is find one frame that looks completely out of whack. He'll make a big circle around it and fire it off to some forums. That's it. You're done. You're cooked.
Right.
So, I mean, you can't. I mean, there's a reason why we haven't gone back to the moon. It's not that we didn't have the budget or the money or anything. It's we don't know how to fake it without the people figuring it out.
Right.
We barely got away with it as it was back in the 60s. We just lucked out because no one had VCRs and televisions were, a lot of people still had black and white television. So you can't do it now, which is why also, again, people make fun that it's my weakest clue. It was my first clue. called the Empty Theater, which was the greatest achievement in civilization, and nobody has, going to the moon, man going to the moon, and there's been no movies made on it. Not one movie has touched on man going to the moon. Yeah. How is that possible? It's 44 years later? No, I'm sorry, 50-something years later now. 44 years since the first picture of Earth. Because you can't. Because if you let a Hollywood studio create their own video, like Rammstein, the heavy metal band, they made a little video and they shot it almost exactly. Of course, these guys absolutely, they're from Germany. They absolutely don't believe that the Americans went to the moon, so they don't really care. But if you let a major Hollywood studio, like take Paramount for example, you let them make a moon movie, how long is it going to take before the special effects guys are putting this together? They sit down immediately. It's like, all right, we're going to fake the moon. And they're getting about halfway into it, and they start building the set, and then all of a sudden that creepy feeling sinks in. Right. Going, wait a minute, this looks exactly like we saw. Which then you have to ask yourself, then they have to ask. It's like, look, we can fake this. Can't anybody fake it? Right. And then the lines get blurred, and you have people talking, and then that's it. They start asking too many questions. Like, and how long would it take to make a documentary called "Look how real we can make the moon"? And plus, you also don't want. You think the production team would get that sinking feeling. You release that in theaters, especially nowadays, like an IMAX movie. People are going to be watching that, going, "Wait, this is fact." In fact, not only is it as good as the moon footage, it's better than the moon footage. And like, okay, how are you doing it? I'm sorry, I could go on forever about the Apollo program. It's just every time I look at it, there's some new little aspect. The thing I've been on recently, the moon cars. Okay, yeah. The moon buggies. It's like no one explained how they got there. No one put them together. There's no even a single frame of anybody actually turning a wrench together. They're just there. They're just there with tires that are made out of a rubber that apparently is a miracle, magical rubber that can withstand heat and cold, and something happened there. It was just it was so horrible. And VM, quick little thing, the Chinese supposedly have a rover on the moon right now. Right. Since 2013, supposedly have a rover out there. And where's the pictures? Where are the pictures? Why? And if you're from another country, let's not be dumb. Right. You're going to put it there. You're going to go to the Sea of Tranquility because that's the only place where there's anything. You're going to go, but you're going to go there. You're going to be real clever. You're going to take pictures. Oh yeah, there's American flag. Bonk. You're going to draw an accent and say, oh, international incident. America's right. And that's you want your incentive to get to us to go to the moon. There it is. Send a probe in, knock over the American flag, and every congressman in the United States will be like, well, we got to fire up that moon program again. But the Chinese supposedly have been there for 3 years, not just sending any pictures of anything. Why? What are they doing there? If they're doing anything at all? Right. Yep. I recently saw a rerun of a show called Fact or Faked. You ever see that? No. It's a science-based show, and they were attacking the moon landing, the moon hoax. So they said they picked out 3 different things that they were going to show whether or not they were faked. One was the dropping of the feather and the hammer. One was the spacewalking, the bouncing, and there was another one. I forgot what the third one was. So they went through and they showed that all 3 of these things could be faked. They used special effects. They showed it. And at the end of the show, they were doing their little summary, and they all sat around and they said, well, we've proven that everything that they did on the moon we could fake, but we went to the moon. And it's like, well, how did you get there? And everyone said the same thing. Yeah, we proved that we could fake it, but we went. And they made that huge jump, and it's like, well, how did you get from we faked it to we went? Because you just showed that they could fake it, and it's just the cover-up is. When they get to a certain point, the mainstream shows have to toe a certain party line. Yep. Especially in the United States, you have to confirm that the Americans went to the moon. And even some of the conspiracy stuff. Alex Jones, for whatever reason, he believes in every conspiracy, and that shows you, honestly, there's what's the Shakespeare line? He does protest too much. That's where we fall short. Everyone knows this, and that is Alex Jones believes in every conspiracy there is, but we went to the moon. George Noriak from Coast to Coast, who interviewed me in the first 15 minutes of the interview, he goes, by the way, just want to let you know, I completely believe we went to the moon. Joe Rogan who initially was completely against the moon missions and talked on the radio several times. We've got it recorded out there. Everyone wants to look it up. Look up the YouTube video called The Joe Rogan Mystery. He was just slicing and dicing people, just saying, you're an idiot if you believe in the Apollo program. And then all of a sudden he goes dark for a while. He comes back, and he's got a brand new sci-fi show. Now, granted, it only ran for one season and was canceled. I think he only ran for like 6 episodes. But the very first episode, what happened? He recanted everything that he ever said against the Apollo program. It said, oh, yeah, I completely believe in the moon program. But to your point, he never explained why.
Right.
And it's like that's what happens. It's like, oh, yeah, I believe in every conspiracy there is. But we absolutely went to the moon.
Right.
It's like, how did you get there? We absolutely went to the moon. That's all they can say. Joe Rogan, to this day, which is why he will never, he can never attack Flat Earth directly because he'll get himself in too much trouble. He has never said to this day why exactly he did the 180 and came back around. I mean, you don't, this like anybody. He was so passionate and there was so much conviction in his voice. I actually enjoyed listening to him tear apart people. And then all of a sudden, because it would take a mountain to turn that guy around. And whatever it was that, whether it was the carrot or the stick or both, he turned around. But the problem is when you do that, you don't generally have a reason that you did it.
Right.
It's not like there's a piece of magical evidence out there that nobody else knows but him. It's like, oh yeah, why didn't he just make up? I saw these real pictures, or I saw this real video. It's like that was hidden from everybody else except you. No, you were threatened, or you were bribed, or both, and you now. You toe the party line. But it's interesting all the way around. Doesn't matter what background, doesn't matter what demographic they're tied to, it's always the same thing, and that is everything else can be put into question except for the moon,
right.
And the Apollo program. It's like, it's staggering that
it is.
Don't notice this because, like, look, NASA is uniquely suspicious. All their military organization, part of the DoD, that was founded on the still smoldering remains of the Nazi Party. Werner von Braun was the guy that set the whole thing up, and they fine. They wear white suits. They don't carry guns. They smile and wave at the camera. And they appear to be doing things that are very similar to Star Trek.
Yeah,
does not mean they are this benign, organization that is going to be Star Trek. They're not.
Right.
And so what they're becoming now is, they're shutting it down all over the place. It's weird. They're running kind of these parallel tracks. One says they're going to be doing all these cool things, but the other track is shutting everything down simultaneously. So the Space Shuttle program's been shut down. They're going to sell off the ISS. They've closed everything they possibly can. Of course, their budget's still up to $20 billion. But at the same time, they keep making these lofty plans.
Right.
Oh yeah, the Orion program. We're going to Mars. We're gonna deliver a 20-pound package to the moon. We're gonna be doing all this. We're gonna bring back the moon base and all this other stuff. But they're not doing anything. Secretly, they're just gonna keep kicking it down the road until finally, who knows? At that point, the public, they just don't notice.
Right.
You never know. Most people don't even know the Space Shuttle program isn't even working anymore.
Right.
And, like what's his face? Who's that astronaut spent a year in space that everybody hates? Oh, Scott Kelly. Scott Kelly comes down from a year in space, the longest ever, man in space. Gets down, and 2 days after he gets down, he quits. He quits NASA entirely. Not just this, this glorious retirement party where, it's covered by major media. No, he just bailed. It's like, why? Why would you bail?
Right.
Did the guild get to you, or you just didn't want to answer any more questions, or what the hell happened? He literally hits the ground. It's like, there's your book tour. You're in space. There's the title of your book. And he quits.
It's when you look into the origin of NASA and you start to find some of the characters. It wasn't just Werner von Braun. We've got two Satanists. We got Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons. You got a Hollywood executive in Walt Disney. You've got a sci-fi writer in Clark. You've got L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology. Just the kind of people you would want to get to put together a program like NASA, right?
Yep.
And so it's like
Gene Roddenberry.
Gene Roddenberry. And so it's just the deception is there, but people believe it. People believe it because they want to believe it.
They do want to believe it. Well, the Americans believe it a lot more than outside this country. Outside this country, people have been suspect for some.
Right.
Some time. Why wouldn't you? The British made big jokes. Don't think for a second that the British not having a space program was an accident. I think that they just kept out of it. It's like, look, this is beneath us. You guys are just terrible at it.
Right.
Going to get tied to this. I mean, when they Diamonds Forever, the James Bond film, 1972, I believe, it was the greatest gag ever because it's a James Bond is a British production, and Sean Connery is running through this Hollywood sets trying to get away from the bad guys, and he runs through a fake moon set.
Right. Oh yes, I remember.
And the best part was they go, oh, you'll get him, right? And the astronauts can't catch him because they're still in character.
Right.
Slow motion, and they can't catch him. He steals their moon buggy, and he drives off the set with it. And actually, their moon buggy was better looking than the original, or than the real moon buggy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the British take shots. They know full well. People in Hollywood, I think, know. But what are you going to do? You aren't allowed to make a movie about it. You can't make a parody movie, and you can't make. I mean, there was a movie just released this year called Moonwalkers. End of last year, early this year. Can't remember. I think it was early this year. Called Moonwalkers, with Ron Perlman, which was about how they were looking. The CIA was looking to bribe Stanley Kubrick, and so they were looking around to see if they could get him to. But the storyline was a little different. It wasn't like they were getting him to fake the moon mission. They were saying, look, we're going to send the capsule anyway, but if the capsule fails, we need backup footage. So that we don't, so if the astronauts die, we don't want to show them dying, so we got to have it covered. Actually, that's not a bad premise. I actually like that premise. But it's still, it's still fake. It's still this massive deception, put on by the U.S. government.
Yeah, the whole thing to me seems to be about the issues of fear versus fearlessness. And I think people are afraid in many ways. They're afraid to address the subject because it means that they were wrong. And a lot of people don't want to look at that. They're afraid to look at it because if they look at it, there's punishment that could come in terms of ridicule, or if it's in considering like what I'm talking about with the Nag Hammadi, it's considering what is the nature of this being that we know of as God, and there's the fear of questioning that. So I think there's just so much fear that's here, but what if these stories all point to that we are trapped in a terrarium, that we were in these skin suits trapped? What if that's real? Are we supposed to walk around and pretend like, no, that's not real, and it's not real, even though I think it's real, and just walk around and continue to be trapped? Or do we want to find a way to free ourselves?
Yeah, I think that would be the natural evolution of this place anyway. I believe that we were supposed to figure this out. And I believe it was supposed to happen naturally sometime, I don't know. If Byrd didn't figure it out, maybe the private sector would have figured it out by the 1960s, maybe the early 1970s. But since the government did it first, the United States and the Soviet Union, they've been keeping this sucker under wraps. You're absolutely right, though. That's what I think everybody wants. Everybody wants, we all, not to use too much from the Matrix because it's so easy to take from it. But when Agent Smith says, that this version was designed, or human beings define their reality through misery and suffering, which is why it was redesigned to this. This place has so much conflict that's almost, from what I can tell, it's inescapable. Doesn't matter how rich, how powerful, how beautiful, how talented you are, you can't escape it. The Joe Walsh song "Life's Been Good," where he talks about the life of a rock star. But no matter what, whatever you think the perfect life is, there's always something to complain about. Which is why I think everybody has a natural vested interest in figuring a way out of here.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just going to keep churning and burning, and it's the same old, same old. So yeah, for me, that's what I'm trying to push, and whether it happens via the 100th monkey effect, where enough people figure it out that this place, because I do believe that that's part of the process. Once enough people figure it out, I don't know what that number is. It's obviously not 100, but once enough people figure it out, I think a trigger is set, and then whoever built this place, or at least whoever the caretakers are, intervene.
Yeah.
And they come in and say, all right, what's the line? Somebody quoted it. It wasn't mine. It was pretty good though. It was once all the students are in their seats, the teacher shows up, in the classroom.
Yep.
And that's where I'm hoping that we are now. Of course, the powers that be could turn it into a darker fashion, or try to. Because let's face it, if you want to create a new world order, ooh, would this be a slick little way to do it?
This could be.
You tell everybody, oh yeah, by the way, you're all in the same boat. And I mean, one of the default side effects of that is that everybody becomes almost communal overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And after a certain fashion, I mean, soldiers out in the field is like, why are we fighting?
Right.
We're all on the same team.
Yeah. I keep going back. For me, it's the words of Yeshua. And he told us, seek and find. Well, you don't seek for something that's in the open. It means something is hidden. So we're challenged right off the bat to seek for something that's hidden. We're told not to be deceived. And we're also told, he says over and over, that when we see him, we see the Father, and that the Father is a loving God. So if all of this is true, then we're not going to get punished for seeking when this is who Jesus is telling what we need to do. We would be embraced to seek and to find what is there. And so I think we need to step past our fear, all in all, because to me this is the biggest deception of all, between the earth and between God, because I think the nature of who and God, what God is about, is keeping us in a state of fear, because people are afraid to step past that, because they'll be punished if they look at something other than what the good books have told them. And when we look past it, we start to see that there's more to the story. And if everyone who's reads the Bible, if you really dig in and you see that the Bible describes a flat earth, it should change your perspective right there of what you understand, because you can't believe in a sphere and the Bible at the same time. They're two different things.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't really know where more to go with this. I mean, it's just pretty much the same conversation, from this point forward, of what's outside of this.
Yeah. Again, I do believe that we will find it one day.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird year. I don't know why. If you would have told me last year that, oh yeah, by the way, the world's most prominent astrophysicist is going to get in a rap battle with a Grammy-nominated rapper over the flat Earth, I would have said, no, I'll take that bet. I'll bet everything against it, and I would have been wrong, because that's exactly what happened. Obama's mentioned it several times.
Mm-hmm.
His last press dinner. It's being addressed by a lot of people. Joe Rogan's brought it up on 8 different shows now. And even though he's never dedicated a show against it, he keeps talking about it. I think secretly he's a closet flat earther.
Right.
But he is by contract not allowed to do a show on it.
Right.
So he's just going to keep making fun of it, therefore drawing attention to it, which is great. It's a loophole, and I'm glad he's using it at this point.
Yeah.
So whatever's going to happen the rest of this year, again, it's a weird election year for the United States. Could there be a crisis coming up to where Obama uses the amendment where he runs for he's in for a third term? And would anyone mind, because they hate the other two candidates? When's that ever happened? Where nobody wants the other two candidates. I mean, people are going, oh yeah, you pick between Trump and Clinton, but that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it's like, no. You have, would people, if you had to choose between Trump and Clinton and Obama, people go, yeah, but Obama's gone. He's already finished his second term. I go, yeah, but what if he was on the ballot for a third term? Would you keep him in there? It's like, yeah, probably.
There's a lot of people that I think would.
Yeah, at the very least, we go, oh, thank God he enacted that, because it was a time of crisis. People in the United States still don't know that in a time of crisis, the president can suspend elections and keep on running for as long as he wants. Look at Franklin Delano Roosevelt during World War II. It's like, why would you change presidents during the end of the war? You don't. Why would you change presidents if there's some real weird crisis? So every morning I wake up, and every morning I look at the news, and I'm going, is today the day that something super weird that even's going to blow my socks off? We'll see. I
think the same thing. Hey, I think that prophecy is unfolding. I think Obama's playing the role of the Antichrist, and there's more to be revealed there. Until I'm proven wrong, that's where I'm going with it. Just like I think that there's a series of dome cities out there that the immortals came from, and that the being who we're looking at is a very prominent creator here was one of those fallen ones from the mortal realms.
Yep.
So there you have it. That's my 2 cents, and it's where I'm at with this point. And I'm just still amazed at the amount of expansion that this community has taken over this last year.
Yeah.
And where it's
been a lot of fun. I'm just humbled to be a part of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Mark, great job. Great job to you. Great job to all of the other flat earthers out there that have, done the work from Eric and Matt and you to all of the new ones who are now in the fold because it's expanding. And I think a couple months down the road, it's going to be even larger.
Yeah, me too.
And we'll see what NASA has to say about all of that.
Thank you very much for having me, by the way.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.